Welcome to this presentation on Chapter 30 about accreditation. Can there be anything more exciting than accreditation? Quick disclaimer, I am recording this very late at night and need to talk very quietly in order to keep a sleeping baby asleep as well as my beautiful wife. Therefore, you may need to turn up your audio in order to be able to hear me speak. Unless you don't want to hear me speak, then you can keep it down. Meet Bob. Bob is really just a clip art image from PowerPoint, but in this story, he is the founder of a correspondence higher education institution. Shortly after Bob launched his school, he got together with his friend who told him that he needed to get accredited. Bob said that he didn't believe in credit cards, cash only. His friend patiently explained that accreditation for correspondence schools is this new big thing, at least in the 1950s it was, and that his school, his friend also has a correspondence higher education school, just joined a cool club called DETC, Distance Education and Training Council, along with a bunch of other correspondence schools. He explained that they just had this great party because they were recently recognized by the US DOE, the US Department of Education, and CHEA, Council for Higher Education. I better check that, and I'll put it in the comments below what that CHEA actually is. Which means they can now accredit institutions like Bob University. Bob says that sounds great, but why would he want to be accredited? Well, says his friend, accreditation institutions do two things. One, evaluate current practice and provide public assurance of the quality of higher education, and two, foster ongoing improvement of your universities. Plus, since the USDOE says we're legit, if we say that you're legit, it is kind of like they're saying it. Bob turns surprised and says, "So you have sold out to the man?" referring to the fact that he sold out to the government. His friend says, "No, we haven't. We are recognized by the USDOE, but we're still separate." In order to be accredited, you have to do the following four things, he explains to Bob. 1. Have clearly defined objectives appropriate for higher education. 2. Assemble and organize resources to accomplish objectives. 3. Demonstrate achievement of objectives. And 4. Continue to achieve objectives. Bob agrees, and Bob U becomes accredited through DECT. So just take a second and pause and reflect. Why do you think that it is good to have independent organizations accredit higher education institutions? Or do you think that that's not good? Is it good to have accreditation institutions separate from the United States Department of Education? Why or why not? You can post those questions or comments on those things below, or on anything else you'd like. Let's get back to Bob. So Bob gets bought. A few years later, Bob sells his correspondence school to a very prestigious university. They hire him on to be their department manager. He tells them the institution is accredited with DETC. They tell him that doesn't really matter because they are accredited with one of the big six. Let's say that is the Northwest one here on the map. And that when their accreditation covers the correspondence part, because when they get accredited, it's the whole institution, it's not just part of the institution that's accredited. They explain that each of these accreditation organizations is also recognized by the USDOE and the CHEA, so they are also legit. He said that each of the six organizations were similar, but different, and that they retained their own autonomy. From each other, I mean, not just from the federal government. Well, Bob does that for a few years, and he likes it very well, but he decides that it's time for a career change. Fortunately, a job opens up at Northwest Organization, and he decides to apply. He gets the job, and in just a few years becomes a really big deal at the Northwest Institution. Oh, This is the same Northwest in this map here that's responsible for accrediting higher education institutions in the northwest corner of the United States. The accreditation institutions, meaning all 6 of these guys, realized that while their autonomy was really cool, they needed to come together to solve some of the problems of accrediting distance education institutions. Bob was selected to attend a special meeting in which a representative of each of the other Big Sixes was chosen to meet, as well as a representative from CHEA. I titled this Avengers Assemble 1993 because there are 6 of them. Well, I don't know, how many Avengers are there? You could probably post that below too. I can't remember. After reviewing all the guidelines used by each of the accrediting bodies, they went on to draft a common set of criteria. However, to Bob's dismay, each institution ended up revising this criteria as it suited them. So this common criteria was not actually common anymore. Well, over the years, you had increasing complication, and Bob saw this coming. And it really the spit hit the fan when Western Governors University tried to become accredited. Well, the problem with Western Governors University was that they had homes in 19 states, and 4 of which were in 4 different of these accrediting bodies up here. So they had to get together and try and come up with a way to resolve this conflict. So they reassembled, and they came up with a new statement called the Statement of Commitment by the Regional Accrediting Commissions for the Evaluation of Electronically Offered Degree and Certificate Problems. I butchered that, but I'm not going to say it again. So in addition to this document they wrote, in which the organizations would all commonly use as their guidelines for accrediting institutions, they also published a document of best practices they could use to help educate institutions as far as what the best practices are for online education. So this brings us all the way to the 2000 mark. When Bob actually retires, shortly after Western Governors University was accredited in 2003. Since Bob's retirement, however, the Council of Regional Accrediting Commissions, yeah, that's right, another one, it's called CRAC, made yet another document of guidelines for evaluating distance education programs. This document is the most current document, at least when this chapter was written, as far as accrediting institutions. So let's talk about the next chapter. Delete that box. So there has also been an increase in legislation. For example, the United States Department of Education has worked with Congress to pass legislation that says that that students in correspondence courses or in distance education courses, more broadly, need to verify who they are when taking the distance education course. Also, they have passed some legislation as far as what a credit hour actually means. So with increased government regulations, concerns arise about whether accreditation will be able to maintain its focus on encouraging improvement as well as ensuring quality control. So then I put back up here the questions again to reponder. I know reponder is not a word, but we're going to pretend it is anyway. So why do you think it is a good idea to have independent organizations accredit higher education institutions? Or is that sort of unnecessary, so to speak? Also, is it good to have accreditation institutions separate from the United States Department of Education? Why or why not? And do you think there needs to be more legislation as far as accreditation institutions? And why or why not? And that's where we'll close. Thank you for watching.